So, this is the introduction to Shadows of a Neanderthal. And one of the first things that I'm going to show you how to do, and it's actually the whole point of the story, is how to think critically. Now, I know you're thinking, well, I know how to think. Everybody knows how to think. That's a little bit different than thinking critically and just thinking. And when we're talking about literature and we're going through especially American literature, because so much of American literature is a commentary on American society, you have to be able to look deeper. And to do that, you have to think critically. You have to be able to analyze things. And that is very difficult for students. I want you to keep in mind the brain is a muscle, okay? And as we are thinking critically, kids often tell me, Miss Smith, my brain hurts. Well, that's because you're working out your brain. And so it's developing that muscle, okay? So, why do we do critical thinking? Okay? You're going to be asked to draw conclusions, okay? And a lot of conclusions. So, in order to do that, you have to be able to go, okay, here is this fact and here is this fact. How do they connect? Okay. For some of them, especially in the younger grades, it was really obvious. In American literature, it's not as obvious. And so you have to be trained on how do we find the clues in the story to draw those conclusions that you need. One of the biggest things I get from students, and it doesn't matter what level, whether it's standard, honors, AP, I've had this from all my students. I don't understand what I've read. That's because you're reading the words on the paper. It's not that you can't read, because you can. It's you're seeing the words on the paper and it's not making sense to you. Part of that is because maybe unfamiliar vocabulary words. Part of it is because you're not seeing the connection between ideas. It's not flowing. And so critical thinking allows you to build in your brain the ability to draw those connections and understand what you're reading. So we're going to work on increasing your reading comprehension. Um, the critical thinking also helps your vocabulary, okay? So that when you see that word again in the future, you're like, oh, I know what that means. Okay. And let's be honest, in the world that we live in, especially this year, the media likes to give you a piece of information and, oh, yeah, you believe that now. And then you turn the channel and it's the same story, but they've given it to you differently. And so now you're like, well, what do I believe? Critical thinking allows you to look at the facts that someone gives you and form your own opinion, okay? And your opinion is your opinion. I don't want to take that away from you. I just want you to learn how to form your own opinion instead of believing whatever someone tells you just because they've told you that. Okay? All right, so how do we use it? Okay. First, let's look at what critical thinking actually is. As you're reading, your brain is answering or asking these questions as you go along. Now, it's not going to be easy. If you like to read, you do this naturally. Okay, you don't think about it. If you're not a reader, it's something we're going to have to train you to do. Who? You're reading a story and you're thinking, well, who benefits from this? You're watching the news. Who benefits from this? Who is it harmful to? Okay. Who makes decisions about this? Who is most directly affected? Who have you also heard discuss this? Okay. Who would be the best person to consult? Who will be the key people in this? I think that's supposed to be key. Who deserve recognition in this? Those are who questions. You don't have to ask all of them as you're reading. I typically go through and just answer the benefit one, or who's directly affected. That gives me typically more bang for my buck, simply because of the type of literature that we have. Okay, the what questions. What are the strengths and weaknesses? What is another perspective? Perspective means point of view, which is a big standard in 11th grade English. So, what is another perspective on this? What's another point of view? Is there an alternative? It's not saying to change your mind, it's just saying, is there another one? This helps you identify bias. Is this the best or worst case scenario? Is this the most or least important? Can we what can we do to make a positive change? And then what is getting in the way of our actions? And again, I would choose a couple of them and just continually use them. Short stories are going to be different from nonfiction. Okay, so for like short stories, I would probably do strengths and weaknesses and maybe perspectives. But for nonfiction, I would probably do perspective again because point of view is always important. But I might do counter argument. Okay. Where would we see this in the real world? Where are there similar concepts? Where is the most need for this? Where in the world would this be a problem? Now, that's big with American literature. It may be a short story, but it's a commentary on society, even with our short stories. And so you're going to ask yourself, where is this going to be a problem? The where is going to help you find your theme. Where can we get more information? Where do we go for help with this? Where will this idea take us? And where are the areas for improvement? That can also lead you to your theme. Where are areas for improvement? When? When is the acceptable unacceptable? When would this benefit our society? When would this cause a problem? When is the best time to take action? All of those will help you with your theme. So if you're really struggling with theme, you can ask yourself, okay, when would this benefit our society, or would this benefit our society? And then if yes, how? If not, why not? And you can kind of turn that into a theme. When will we know we've succeeded? When has this played a part in our history? When can we expect this to change? When should we ask for help with this? American writers love to use these when questions. Okay. All right. Our why. Let me move this up. Why is this a problem or a challenge? And I like to do a lot of the why questions in class because it does make you think. Why is this relevant to me, to others? One of the most important questions I always get is, why do we have to study this? This is English class. Why do we have to read about blank? We're going to talk about each one of those that question every time it comes up with each one of our units. But there's a relevance to everything that's happened. Okay, and asking yourself why is it relevant helps you to understand the story. Why is this the best worst case scenario? Why are the people influenced by this, especially today with what's going on? Why are people influenced when you read this article or read this article? What does that say about our society? Why should people know about this? Why has it been this way for so long? Why have we allowed this to happen? And why is there a need for this today? This will also lead you to your theme, because a lot of our authors, they're writing about something being wrong in society, and these questions will help you find that theme, or why they're writing, or even their author's purpose. How is this similar to? How does this disrupt things? How do we know the truth about this? This really ties into our bias. How will we approach this safely? How does this benefit us or others? That's a good question to ask when we're reading an extremely biased piece. How does this benefit us? Okay, how does this benefit others? So is there information that's missing to make us more likely to agree? How does this harm us or harm others? How do we see this in the future? And how can we change this for our generation? That last one, changing it for your generation, a lot of times that can help you find a theme as well. All right, so let's look at how you do it. This is an excerpt from the story you read in the last lesson, Priscilla and the Wimps. So you would have this sheet with you when you read. And you don't, again, have to have all the questions. I would just keep in mind a couple of them, maybe a sticky note that you keep on your computer or in your textbook that says, all right, as I'm reading, ask myself these questions. All right, I need my pen here. All right, there we go. So as we read, I'm going to model for you what you will be doing. Except there was this one girl named Priscilla Roseberry. Picture a girl named Priscilla Roseberry and you'll be light years off. Priscilla was, hands down, the largest student in our particular institution of learning. I am not talking fat. I am talking big, even beautiful in a bionic way. Priscilla wasn't inclined towards organized crime. Otherwise, she could have put together a gang that would turn Clutter's cobras into gardener snakes. Okay, so now I'm going to blow this up so you can see it. Let's look at the who questions first. Who benefits doesn't really go well with this. Who's it harmful to doesn't go. Who makes decisions? Who's affected? Okay, let's look at this. Who would be affected by knowing what she's like? The reader knows that she's strong. Okay. In terms of the story itself, who would be affected? Well, the people in her school. All right, are there any what questions we can ask? What are the strengths and weaknesses? That's always a good question. So based on this, what are her strengths and weaknesses? Okay. She wasn't inclined towards organized crime, so she's pretty honest. That's a strength. Can it also be a weakness? Okay. We're going to put a question mark beside that because that's something that you want to think about as you're going through. You know, does her honesty lead her into trouble? You don't know yet. You haven't finished the story. And this is a good thing to do as you read is to go, well, is it a weakness? I don't know. Put a question mark beside it. And then as you're reading, you sort of look for that answer. All right. Let's go look at our other one here. Okay. Why is this a problem? Okay, I like that one. So why is it a problem? Talking about size. Well, is it a problem first? The author's spending a lot of time talking about this. So why is it a problem or a challenge? Is she unpopular? Or is she popular because of fear? Meaning, do people like her just because they're afraid not to like her? There's something about this that's important. All right. And you can do this on sticky notes. I've always told kids to do this on the paper of the stories that they're reading. You can annotate in the online textbook. You can write in your physical textbooks. But this here, the annotation, is how you learn. It's how you comprehend. And it's one of the most important skills you'll be doing. You will be writing on every single story or typing in the online textbook every single story we do all year long. Okay. So go through, choose the questions from each one of these that you want. And you can start with one. If you're like, you know what, this is way too overwhelming. There's no way I can do this. Then choose one or two categories and one or two questions from each and just focus on that. And then as you get better, you can add more later. Okay. All right, so that's critical thinking. This is what we're going to apply as we do our lesson, Shadows of a Neanderthal.